1930s through 1950s, Knoxville, Tennessee had a thriving country music scene. It regularly supplied future stars to the Grand Ole Opry, and the number of hit songs with Knoxville connections during the era is staggering. But if you looked at the record labels or the sheet music to these songs, you'd likely find a lie. For instance, credited as songwriter, you'd see Claude Boone's name on the Hank Williams hit Wedding Bells. You'd see Shirley Lynn, Carl Story, and Carl Smith's names on the song I Overlooked an Orchid While Searching for a Rose, which was a big hit for Carl Smith and later Mickey Gilley. You'd see Carl Butler's name on If Teardrops Were Pennies, recorded by Carl Smith, Rosemary Clooney, and later Dolly Parton and Porter Wagoner. But the real author of these songs was a man who went by the name of Arthur Q. Smith.
Arthur Q. Smith is a really important guy because he's pretty unsung. A few aficionados and really hardcore fans know about him. But he was so instrumental in writing these songs that helped to shape country music in the 1940s and 1950s.
In the early 1950s, Q, as his friends called him, could be found at the Three Feathers Sandwich Shop on the corner of Gay Street and Jackson Avenue. Along with drinking there, Q wrote and sold songs. Sometimes he sold them for $25, sometimes he sold them for $15. Sometimes he sold half interest for $8.50, and due to his ongoing alcoholism, sometimes he simply sold them for the amount of his bar tab, which was ever present. When he sold those songs, his customers had them copyrighted with their own names, and they were forever lost to the man who created them. But now, his story is finally being told with the release of the book and 2-CD set, The Trouble with the Truth, on Germany's Bear Family Records. The book was written by Bradley Reeves, co-founder of the Tennessee Archive of Moving Image and Sound, and myself, Wayne Bledsoe, of the Knoxville News Sentinel.
The story just fascinated me. This lost songwriter from my own hometown who created so much great music but was undeservedly forgotten about in present times. So when Luis and I started up the Tennessee Archive of Moving Image and Sound way back in 2005, Arthur Q. Smith was always in the back of my mind. And as time went on, pieces of information, photographs, recordings, film even, of Arthur Q. Smith started to trickle in.
Arthur Q. Smith was born in Griffin, Georgia in 1909 and raised in Harlan, Kentucky. His legal name was James Arthur Pritchett, but he went by his middle name and his stepfather's last name for much of his life. In Harlan, he became a coal miner and a guitar player. Sometime around 1935, he hitchhiked to Knoxville, and in 1936, he landed a gig on the WNOX radio show, The Midday Merry-Go-Round. The Merry-Go-Round was broadcast before a live audience daily at noon, and it was enormously popular. Roy Acuff was its first star, but the stable of future country music legends that would work there included Chet Atkins, Homer and Jethro, Kitty Wells, Bill Carlisle, Archie Campbell, Molly O'Day, Flatt and Scruggs, and Don Gibson. The show's MC, Lowell Blanchard, decided that Arthur Smith needed something to distinguish himself from the other Arthur Smiths of the music world, so he added a Q. Q proved to be a versatile performer and comedian, and Blanchard also nicknamed him the Tennessee Cornhusker and gave him his own program. The program didn't last, but Q's friends and fellow performers found out there was something that he was even better at: writing songs.
I used to wander in darkness, lost on the sea of despair. Since I made peace with my Savior, my soul is safe in His care. I've got a home.
Often, he sold songs to his fellow performers, and he kept a record by writing the lyrics on a sheet of notebook paper and writing the purchasers' names in the margin. The Carter sisters and Mother Maybelle bought a song. Chet Atkins bought one, Bill Monroe, Carl Story, Carl Butler, Eddie Hill, and many other names are written in those margins. Some of Q's customers were happy to reveal who the true author was. Others pretended that they'd written the songs themselves. Probably on the recommendation of fellow performer and song customer Bill Carlisle, Q got a publishing deal with Lois Music and a recording contract with King Records in Cincinnati. Unfortunately, Q continued selling songs on the side, including what would become some of the era's biggest hits.
After the war was over, I was coming home to you. I saw a rainbow at midnight out on the ocean blue.
Several artists had hits with Rainbow at Midnight, including the Carlisle brothers and Ernest Tubb. Tubb also had a hit with Missing in Action. Unfortunately, Q's selling songs on the side, and probably his alcoholism, resulted in his leaving King Records and Lois Music. He was in his second marriage with the former Lillian Fritz, and he moved the family to Memphis and then to Shreveport, Louisiana to work radio jobs. It was in Shreveport that he signed on as Hank Williams' business manager. Williams had a hit with Q's song Wedding Bells, which Q had sold to Knoxville's Claude Boone for $25. Boone would reap thousands in royalties from the song, and in later years he would occasionally admit that he had bought it from Q. Williams had promised to record a song that Q hadn't sold, called The Man in the Moon Cried Last Night, but he died before he had the opportunity. Q, meanwhile, was back in Knoxville at the Three Feathers and selling songs to anyone who had the cash to buy. Chet Atkins told me once that he'd asked Q why he sold the songs so cheaply, and Q had replied, "You don't know how many times I sold them." During this period, probably Q's best customers were Leonard and Helen Shersky, who owned and operated the Three Feathers. Helen used the name Helen Kay and may have actually been a collaborator on some of the songs. The couple saved Q's handwritten bills of sale, and their daughter Emily recently donated receipts, lyric sheets, and demos to the Tennessee Archive of Moving Image and Sound.
Just material of some of the songs that he actually wrote, and probably most of them he sold. Here, I'm looking at one here that he sold to Leonard Shersky that he wrote for his daughter Emily. Another song here is Wedding Bells. He wrote and sold it to Claude Boone. Then another one, Answer to Wedding Bells. If Teardrops Were Pennies, Love in the First Degree. He's just assorted a bunch of songs that is his written lyrics of songs that he wrote that he actually sold to other people.
Did you know, growing up, did you know about all these lyric sheets and things he'd written?
Only after he had passed away in 1963 that this was all his property. We wasn't allowed to touch it in 1963. That it become property of my mother's, and we just tried to preserve it ever since. That's when we started kind of digging in and seeing. But even then, we didn't know, with technology not being like it was then, we just knew he wrote songs and he sold it to other people. And as we got older in life, we realized and was told stories where he was an alcoholic and he virtually sold his songs just to get money for his addiction.
Tell me a little bit about, we talked one time about how people had just talked about his alcoholism, that sort of thing, and not talking about his talent. I mean, what was it like growing up?
Well, we was told as a very young, when we was very young, like I said, he died in 1963, and a lot of his friends just they classified him as a drunk,
right?
With just a complete alcoholic drunk bum. He was virtually a bum on the streets, and but as we kids got older, we realized that alcoholism is a sickness, and we realized that our father was a sick man. And he never got his addiction taken care of. He went for it quite a few times. He had been to Veterans Hospital in Johnson City, if I can remember, quite a few times for his problem, but he never was able to recover.
You told me once that you don't have any good memories of him. Is that true?
I don't have. I've searched my mind before and over, and I'm not saying there wasn't any. It's just that the virtually the bad memories has overcome the good memories of just what a father should be as I've gotten older, what a father should be, what a husband should be. I just didn't see that in my father.
We also talked about that he could be violent. Was that
Very
right?
violent. He was very violent with my mother, violent with his children, especially my oldest brother David. He's only my half brother, but we classify him as just our brother. Period. He's no different than any of the rest of us. But he was he experienced most of the abuse because he's 6 years older than me, and I'm the oldest Pritchett. So he died when I was 13. So he experienced more of the abuse than most of us.
Do you attribute that to the alcohol?
I contribute all off to alcohol. I contribute. I mean, of course, everybody could have some anger management problems, but me myself, I've drank quite a bit myself in my lifetime, and I know where my anger was when I drank. I've not drunk since 1992, and praise the Lord for that. But I realize that even with me, anger issues comes with alcoholism.
Arthur Q. Smith, legally known as James Pritchett, died of cancer on March 21st, 1963. At the funeral, an argument broke out between two of the mourners, both of whom claimed ownership of the same Q-written song. The song was called "It's All Over Now." But it wasn't. In 1982, Ricky Skaggs recorded Q's song, "I Wouldn't Change You If I Could," which Q had kept half ownership in. And in 1983, it became a #1 country hit. The song made the family enough money so that they could buy youngest brother Glenn, who had recently become paralyzed, a house.
One of the things that bothers me is I just like to know when this man was so broken. Not only from his, you can read it, you can see it in his music, his alcoholism. He was a broken man somewhere, and I don't know where.
None of these big songs, it's ever bothered you that people are making money off of?
It bothers me that they don't tell the truth about it.
Right.
That is how my father did the business. Whether it was right or whether it was wrong, it was wrong on both parts. But telling the truth is just being honesty and telling the truth. They can keep their money. Like I said, we've had a wonderful life. All of us have had a wonderful life. Long after my mother passed away, after my father passed away, our mother made sure that we had a wonderful life, and we did. It's just the honesty that I don't think we've asked for.
I'll bet the angels shed a tear the day you said goodbye. We had a heaven of our own we built for you and I. I'll bet the angels smiled the day that you became my bride. But when you packed and went away, I'll bet the angels cried.